Okay, everyone. Excited to have. Let me get your name right here. Ishita Sharma, correct? Yeah,
Yep.
awesome. So excited to have you here, and this is gonna for anyone watching this. We're kicking off kind of a Hope Ambassador series where I'm going to be interviewing a few different people, and Ishita happens to be the first one here to continue the conversations that we started at the Global Hope Summit and continue to spread this message of how we can all really come together, move forward, create a better world, and move humanity forward. And right now is such a interesting time for that conversation with everything going on. And so I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to Ishita here. She is the founder of ComeToCenter.com, has done some really amazing work, including coaching leaders at Google, Harvard, MIT, Silicon Valley, and just visionaries across the world. And her big thing is really like the action, belief, and identity are really required to heal any deep-rooted personal or systemic patterns. So I'm happy to just have a conversation with her about her like integrating Eastern and Western wisdom, and we'll just kind of have the conversation and see where it takes us. So it's exciting. So welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Tim. I think you did a pretty good job right there. So, not much
Cool.
else to say. Um, Maybe I'll add that it feels like a really interesting time for me personally.
Mm,
Um, as you said, I'm bringing East and West kind of into this integrated whole here. And I'm Indian. I
right.
was born in India. And until 2 weeks ago, I was a citizen of that country. And now I'm a citizen of the US. So just like everything around me, my life is rebirthing itself right now. So it's kind of not missed on me, let's say,
Yeah.
the time we're in.
Yeah, I love that. It does seem like the last I don't I don't remember. I guess it's been what, 6, 8 months now. It's
Yeah.
kind of all flowing together a little bit at this point. But um, I someone told me too, like, oh, nature is kind of putting you in timeout. But I love this idea that
Mm,
you've described as like a reboot, right? Like
mm.
it's time to really, dive deeper into who we are, kind of like get rid of all the accumulated data and files, if we think about it in this computer analogy, right? And come back to just kind of who we are. So yeah, I would just love to hear from you. What are some ways that we can sort of lean into that reboot and start to recognize more about ourselves and our place in the world today?
Mm. There's so many ways, and in a way of speaking, every moment has that invitation.
Mm,
And we can often get lost in trying to formalize things, but if we really pay attention, right, and I think the key might be one of the key ways to enter that space of transformation, of reboot, as you call it, is slowing down. And I'm not the only one talking about this. This is a practice. It's a lived practice in the way we eat our food, in the way we come together to speak, right? In the way we meet our children. Why? Because slowing down allows you to really be with experience as it's happening.
mm,
And if I'm able to receive life as it's coming, then I don't need to disconnect from life. It's in fact connecting more deeply into life. So I'm charging my battery as I live my life, and it's fluid.
mm,
So there's, in everything that I might say to you, that would be the thing behind the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, go sit in Zen meditation. Well, that makes you slow down. Eat mindfully. That's a slowing down. It's just, how am I paying attention?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I've definitely seen some instances in my own life. For instance, just like it seems honestly like the last couple of months, even working with, building Global Hope Summit and stuff like that, I actually slowed down and somehow got more done. You know?
Right, slowing down to speed up, they say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I think there's even a Navy SEAL motto that like fast is slow and slow is fast.
Mm.
And part of the integration is like, getting the space to actually learn and develop like those proper responses. So
Mhm.
other than like meditation and eating slowly, maybe taking some time in nature,
Mhm.
like how has slowing down like affected your life personally, um, and are there any other ways that people can just slow down a little bit?
Right, that's a great question. So, I used to work in the corporate world, and I was an architect and a designer and a writer and many other things. And what I noticed for me was, when I started finding myself sitting down and being quiet and doing nothing, there was just something in that space that walked with me through the day. And I would do things, I would experiment, right? Like, slowing down also looks like this. I would say to myself, I'm going to do only one thing at a time. So, there I was, little Miss Architect. I had my 20 tabs open. My contractors are calling me, my boss is calling me, my clients and colleagues. Everyone is inundating you with requests, and you're getting email and you're talking on the phone. And then I said to myself, I'm going to do one thing at a time. So if I'm on the phone with a client, I'm only on the phone with the client. That's it. It has all my attention on this one thing. If I'm speaking to someone and the phone rings, it cannot be answered then, because who I'm with is where I'm at. When I walk up to microwave my coffee, I stand there and I'm with that process.
Mm.
And what that does is it allows me to control how I'm paying attention, rather than my scattered, compulsive attention habits running the show. And that's kind of a moving meditation, right? It's not meditation, it's living with intention. And there's so many doorways, right? When you meet your children, you just meet your children. It's just that simple. And how has it affected me? I mean, it's been a profound shift in my life. Like, I started noticing the neurosis in my mind. My boss would ask me a question and I didn't know the answer, and I was like, oh wait, like, I notice that when I don't know the answer, it makes me very uncomfortable. Now, isn't that interesting? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I wasn't paying attention, I would never have noticed.
Yeah.
And then there's just like an ocean of curiosity that comes with that. Like, oh wow, like, what's so uncomfortable about uncertainty? How many times do I try to avoid uncertainty? Why does this make me anxious? How would it be if it didn't? Like, and so on. Like, that's where the rubber hit the road for my life.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And so like that level of like, we can talk about uncertainty because I think that's
Mm.
such a big key here for
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing, dealing with uncertainty. Like the world is uncertain right now about anything.
Right.
You know, like when is coronavirus gonna end? Who knows? Who's gonna be the next president? Who knows?
Who
It's
knows?
just like all of these things. So yeah, I mean, like how has your relationship with uncertainty shifted since then, since recognizing that in yourself? Um,
Mm.
and how do you relate to uncertainty today in a different way than you did then when you first noticed that?
Mhm. Wow, what a question. So let me first be clear about something, right? That is, as I see it. As I see it, life is no more uncertain now than it was 6 months ago, than it was 2 years ago, than it will be 20 years from now. And that's huge, right? So it's very easy to clutch on and say, oh, it's more uncertain now because of this and this. Well, there's always a degree of uncertainty around us
Mm,
that we are very easily able to delete from our vision, to stay with that analogy. Like, it's like the blind spot, right? Like, we talk
right.
about blind spots a lot, but it's very easy to put blinders on what we don't want to see.
Mm,
And we don't like uncertainty, but it is a fact of existence. It's always here, right? I used to enjoy this, like when we used to study probability. I was a math
mm,
major, a physics major at some point, lots of math in my life, right? And probability used to blow my mind, like, whoa. I mean, just look at the likelihood of you and me sitting here in this way together today. Like, look at any piece of life, how improbable, how unpredictable. You look at any piece of me, I'm moving at the speed of light, and you don't even know where I'm going to be in the next, right? Like, that's the nature of existence.
right.
And I guess that had to be fully seen and felt in me.
Mm,
And the attachment to certainty was the thing that I had to sit with. Like, what is it that makes me grasp for certainty? Well, it turns out I was using it as a surrogate for safety, to feel safe and secure, so that I could predict, like, tomorrow I will get my paycheck and I will have this and that, and then it will be good. And that's the kind of certainty, right, that
yeah.
we cling to. And there's a freedom in letting go of that. That, life has taught me with lots of experience. Like, it's totally my choice. Like, I can sit and grasp over the thing so I can feel more in control. And then if I see what happens when I kind of let it go and I just hold it lightly, my experience has been that I feel a lot more elated,
Mm,
joyful, full, right? And less confined, less anxious in my body. That need to know is still there, and I still find it so many times. Like, I still find myself, you know, like pushing and pulling to get the answer that I really want to know, and then I'm like, oh wait, I lost curiosity.
mm,
I started to grab something so tightly that I'm squeezing the thing that I want. Oh, okay. How would it be to let it go? Like, feels very different. Feels like excitement when it's
yeah.
not resisted.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think like um, I think it's easy to relate to that uncertainty when it's like, well, you know what, it's so big of a thing, like I don't feel like I have control. Like I think
Mm.
those things are easier maybe to let go of. But how does that apply to something like in business or in like my personal relationships where like I am uncertain And
Mm-hmm.
there's even like a more deep seated feeling of like, if I don't know this, like I could make the wrong decision. I could make the wrong, I could take the wrong steps forward. Um, how do you deal with that deeper level of that uncertainty? And I imagine it's pretty similar,
Mm.
but when it feels like so important, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that it's like this is going to define how my life is from here on out, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. That's a really beautiful, I want to call it an inflection point.
Mm,
And we've all been there, right? We've all had this decision that feels like it's going to be the be all, end all, change all. And if you look back at your life, right, at all those moments, I would be very shocked if we all sat here and looked back and said, well, this decision completely brought me to full happiness, and this decision brought me, right? Like, it's really hard. And
yeah.
yet we tend to make things so big and black and white that we get stuck in the decision making process from our cognitive mind.
Mm,
And the funny thing that I don't think we talk about enough in our culture is that the mind is not, it's not the best decision making machine in this intelligent body.
right.
Right? It's not the place to choose from. It's actually the worst place to choose from, because the mind is so amazing. It's so intelligent and it's so creative that it can justify anything, right? It can make black look white and white look black, and it can convince us of the rightness or the wrongness of anything. Right? One of my favorite things to do is argue both sides of a question that I feel really, really strongly about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I like to consider the mind a processing tool rather than a decision making tool.
Right,
But yeah.
right. And so in those inflection points, in those times when we think we really need to do the right thing, the more we're attached to that idea, the less space there is in the hard drive.
Mm,
Right? So the first thing to do there is actually to relax and to imagine. I like to play this game with myself. It's like, when I'm thinking that this is like make or break, then I take some time and I say, okay, like, whatever I choose, I'm going to be just as happy. Which is kind of true, right? You can win the lottery and your level of happiness comes back to the same level it was in about 6 months.
yeah.
You lose a leg, you come back to your baseline. Like, it's very, it's very convincing, right? It's very seductive, the idea that this one thing is going to make or break my life. And it just isn't so.
Yeah.
Right? So in those times when uncertainty is what we all navigate all the time. Right? Like, and in business and in relationships and all of these things, the truth is that we don't actually know. So the best that we can do is really listen to what feels good and aligned and connecting. But if I'm trying to manage the outcome of 20 years from now, it's very hard for me to know or control. And I'm setting myself up for a lot of pain. But if I'm looking in front of me and saying, given all that I know, what feels right and connecting? What feels good and relaxing in my nervous system, so that I'm not acting out of fight or flight? If I make it do or die, black and white, yes or no, right? Like, I'm already triggered. I'm already in a fight or flight response.
Mm,
And it's actually impossible to make a good decision from that place unless you're being attacked by a bear. Then you gotta run. You gotta go. I'm with you. Like, we gotta.
yeah. No, no, no letting me feel what my body thinks right there in that moment.
That's what this mechanism is for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You put me in front of a cheetah, I will use that shit. Like,
Right.
I will for everything else.
I
Is
love
not.
that. Yeah, I think that's it's such an important, and like what my mind goes to as you're talking about this, the uncertainty, the like planning for the future, the um, you know, letting our minds and stuff kind of take over this process. Like there's so many people right now that are just scared. They're afraid of like what is going to happen politically, socially,
Mhm.
like we're seeing, a lot of a lot of this injustice everywhere right now, and like and all those things we're trying to create and craft
Mhm.
this future.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people also have like sort of their mission, their reason for being here.
Mhm.
Um, so how can we kind of pull all this together and be in those tough conversations about these topics, be in like being okay when
Mhm.
something or someone appears to be um, against what they believe, like wrapping all that kind of together. How can we sort of, I guess, a be okay with those differing points of view,
Mhm.
and b work towards making things better from a place that is still present.
Right. I mean, Tim, you just answered the question in asking it. You just did it, right? Like you know this. And every one of us, I think, really deep down, we know this. We all experience the openness. We all have experienced that possibility of being in present space together, sharing a real connection together. And you named it in the end, you said it. It's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. It's where is it coming from? How are we coming together? Like, this is something that I can't say enough of. It's not what I'm doing, it's the state of consciousness from which I'm engaging, right? Like, why is it that sometimes you listen to someone and your whole nervous system comes down? Why is it that some things hit us and help us settle, and others activate us, right? Like it's the state of receptivity, it's the state from which it's generated. It's energy, man, right? Like it all comes down to what energy are we engaging from. If I listen to you, like you are wise, like you have something that I want to know. I see my body is already getting goosebumps just saying this, right? If I can be with you while I'm respecting and honoring and enjoying and expecting beauty and goodness and truth and love and wisdom, my God,
Yeah.
I will listen to you. And it'll be more enjoyable for not just you, also for me. I will get more out of that.
Right.
And if I listen to you like you're an idiot who I need to talk over quickly, make my point, like, right? Like, I mean, that's what we do when we've made up our mind, when we think we know. I'm
Mm.
not saying big when we know, because we don't know. But when we think we know, I'm done. I have nothing to
Yeah.
receive from you. You're an idiot. Whatever you say, however wise, I don't care. I'm not receptive. And that's the kind of place where we jam up against each other, right? Like, so it's what is presence is the space of being open and vulnerable and malleable to life.
Yeah, I love that idea of, you said malleable. It's such a great word because I think so often we get caught up in, you know, needing our beliefs to be right, you know, and then needing like in the conversation for, to prove it, honestly. And but there's something I think that's been lost a lot right now, and I think honestly one of the things that the U.S. was kind of founded on was a principle of like being able to have conversations, and whatever the, leaving the sort of the darker side of history aside for a moment, like one of the things was that, like, no, we want you to be able to be free to speak your mind, right? And I think that is so so important because that allows change, that allows evolution or the malleability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I heard a lot of in what you were saying was, like if I can't show up to a conversation willing to change my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and being still in my beliefs, but willing to change my mind, willing to be curious. I love that
Mm-hmm.
word that you used earlier. I think that's so powerful, and I know that I've seen one of the big things that, you know that I personally believe is that, like, if I show up to a conversation and I'm actually interested, then because I want to know why would someone think this way? Why would someone think differently than me? And I've just noticed that when I show up in that way, the conversations are a lot better, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess, my question there is, um, like, how can you feel safe or secure inside yourself to enough to open up and have a conversation like that, a conversation of real curiosity that could result in a total obliteration of your beliefs, right? And like if we take this to the heights of the, you know the words escape me right now, but the heights of extremes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can you like, what are either some tools you could use, or a mindset shift you could make that can allow you to feel that, like, safe, the insecurity that you need while being still open and curious.
Mm-hmm. So in my work, this is something we look at a lot,
Mm,
and I have less words and more experiments for this kind of thing.
that's fair.
But there's something very beautiful in what you're saying that I'd like to underline. Right? If I come in any conversation or engagement, if I engage from a place of wanting to know the truth, it's a very different place when I assume I don't know. I assume that I don't know the whole truth.
Mm,
Right? Like you've heard of that metaphor, the elephant metaphor. Right? Like 7 people are in a room touching an elephant and they're blindfolded and they're describing the elephant, and one's like, it's a long, thin, pointy thing with hair on the tail. And one's like, no, it's like really flappy and has, and another part and another part. And I know that I can't see the whole elephant until everyone around me brings what they're seeing,
mm,
because the truth must be calibrated in the mirror of relation, right? Every spiritual tradition will say this: the absolute truth, the capital T truth, the isness of what is, we cannot name. It cannot be named. It cannot be known. It can only be been. It can be pointed to, but you cannot name it. And everything else, the relative truth, as they call it in Buddhism, right? Like it has to be that I bring what's true for me. I bring my clear harmonic out in relation and I put it here in the space between us. And you bring yours. And then we calibrate. We get to meet in that space and discover together what that shape wants to be. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because I can't know without your truth coming through. So I need it. I want it. Very different.
Right.
And if we get attached, right, it's very important to notice. Why are we always stressing on body awareness? Because it's very important to notice when I go into contraction. How do I respond in myself? If I go into contraction, when I get scared, I'm in defense. I'm putting on the armor. You won't be able to see me. I won't let you see me.
Mm.
Needing to be right is one of those protections. Needing to prove my point is another.
Yeah.
Oh, I do it. In my family, we love being right. Fuck connection. We want to teach each other, right? Like, so it was a lot of deconditioning that had to happen, and like sitting with the discomfort, the unsafety in my body. And we all have that to some degree. Different things will trigger us into that space of unsafeness. And it wants to be looked at.
Yeah.
It needs to be looked at. At some point, if we can't hold space for ourselves, we hire people who can, right? Like it's a good idea to give that part of you the loving attention and space that it needs so it can digest the experience that wasn't digested as it was unfolding and is still causing an old conditioned pattern of attention, of behavior to show up. So I wish it was a quick mindset switch and like little t trauma, capital T trauma, all of these unprocessed life experiences, they're real and there's a karmic structure that we bring into life and that we live through. And why? Because we put this bodysuit on to say like, okay, let me go on this ride and I want to work through this. And this is that time. Like this is the time to do that work.
Yeah. I I really loved this. You talked about the truth, and it can only be experienced, and through a bunch of people's experiences, right? And it feels a little bit like there's a similarity there in how you deal with safety or uncertainty,
Mm.
in that it's a series of experiences where you sit with and deal with the trauma of feeling uncertain or unsafe. Um, so what's a good way to process that?
Mm-hmm.
Is like how can we take time to process those traumas? Or well, I'll let you speak to this, but like what's a good way to help ourselves through those things?
Mm. Right. Hmm. So the first thing that I want to note is in our culture, we have a lot of self-criticism, right? Like there's a famous story where the Dalai Lama was at some conference and I think it was Sharon Salzberg who raises her hand and she's like, excuse me, what do you think about self-hatred? And takes the translator like 10 minutes to explain to him that people are sitting here hating themselves. Right. And so that voice that we often hear, the voice of your inner critic, it's like, now you're not doing this right. Oh, you fucked it up again. You're driving too fast, you moron. Like that one, like the one that's probably narrating this experience as I'm talking in your head. Right? That's that's the thing that we need to befriend. And the first thing that I would say is we need to be really good friends with ourselves. And so when I notice, oh, there's a part of me that's being unkind, can I welcome that part and can I be with it and give it the loving attention that it is asking for? Can I be with it and say, thank you, I love you? And it's actually a part of me that wants something good for me in a strategy that's not working. So can I recognize it as a distorted version of a friend rather than a foe to be fought? That's the first thing. How can I love myself as I am? Right? So even in a moment, I mean, most of my clients have this experience, right? Like at the end of our work together, I'm like, what did you get? And they're like, I love myself. Like, well, great, like that's so big of everything else, right? Like, because it's the foundation of everything else. So can you meet yourself with love the way that you would someone else you care about? Can you show yourself the same compassion, the same gentleness that you would offer your 2-year-old when they were frightened? At what point do we decide that you have to suck it up and march through whatever's happening and you have to do it perfectly as defined by everyone around you? Mm. So one of the most effective, I mean, I would say it's a healing modality in and of itself, is just loving yourself, which doesn't mean appeasing yourself, which doesn't mean bypassing, which doesn't mean caretaking. It means actually, honestly looking in the mirror, accepting that you are as you are, and it is good. So you don't need to be different to be worthy of your love or anyone else's. Right? Because when we're unsafe, we're out of connection with reality. When we feel unsafe, we lose connection with what is alive in the present moment. It's very unsettling. Your nervous system has lost its ground. Right? So if I have access to someone who has a grounded nervous system, I can co-regulate. Right? I can use their sensitivity. They can offer me their field, so to speak, so I can find my way back through the chaos into what I call center. That's the first thing. And if I don't have that, then I need to be my own mother. I need to learn to become my own grandmother, even. Welcoming myself home. Does that make sense?
So it
How does
totally
that land
does.
on
It
you?
totally does. And in fact, my one of my grandmothers was I had a very very deep relationship with. She died when I was like 12, so it's like that certainly hits a chord for me. And she was just an absolutely amazing human being. So uh, especially in my 12-year-old eyes. So, but yeah,
But that's
I
really
love that
big,
too.
right? Like, so you know that safety of being held by your grandma.
Yeah,
It's very precious.
yeah, it's beautiful. Um, so I guess part of what I um, am hearing a lot of here, this idea of love, and I've always, for some reason, in my mind, had this picture of love as this idea of merging. with something. Like, and I get that that's like, there's, it's like when I want that food, or I love this food, like I want it to be a part of me,
Mm,
when I like love this person, perhaps
mm,
I have this desire to create something together, right?
mhm.
And there's the whole, even the idea in in relationships of like becoming one, right?
Right.
um and I think, even in, if we look at kind of the spiritual side of things, there's
Mm.
the same sort of thing. It's like I want to become, the idea of oneness, right? And that we're all together. And so,
No, not an idea, Tim.
well, I get that. I get that.
I'm kidding.
Right, totally. But let's call it a concept then.
Mm.
But how do you, um, like when you think about love and this idea of loving yourself, um, like how would you describe
Mm.
love, I guess?
Mm. I mean, my mind has in love with.
Hmm.
And I might say, right, if we put our attention, like if we just take the elevator down from here down to here, and we just put our attention there, something shifts. Something different starts to happen. Right? And in that field, I would call it a field. I often say the field of love. It's not that you don't get to exist as you and I don't get to exist as me. You get to be all of you. I get to be all of me. And when we meet, we recognize ourselves as each other. Right? I feel it coming. So do you feel that happening? Like my body is already dancing in that feel like, oh wow. Hmm. I don't want to be in your body. I don't want you to be in mine. I want us to have this gorgeous dance
Hmm.
together,
Right.
right? Right. And Nisargadatta said this really beautifully. He's one of my faves. And
Hmm.
he says, in love, there is not even one. How can there be two?
Yeah, I love that.
We do, don't we?
Yeah.
But, and I mean, it's a funny thing to think about. If I was to give words to it, that's kind of what I would say. How does that land in you?
Yeah, I think for me it's, when I hear that idea of, I see a lot of, I think a lot of times people trying to heal themselves by other people, right? And like the relationships and things
Hmm.
that they're in. And I think it's hard to be able to do what you described, certainly without, two whole people rather than two halves, um and so that kind of came up
Mm,
for me a little bit, thinking
mm,
about that concept. But in a larger perspective, it's, I think, I guess, looking at that, the mind looking at that from another angle, right, is sort of this idea that we talked about, the oneness, right, that it does exist, like, and if that's the one, right, then each person is just a part of that already,
mhm,
so so
mhm.
yeah, like a couple of different, I guess, ideas come to mind on that. But
Yeah,
um you know
this thing about right, there's something in what you said. There's something about, in our culture, we confuse love with codependence
Mm.
very often.
Yeah.
And we confuse compulsion in a way for it. I must have you, like all the songs, right? Like, or I will die without you. And we think that's a great compliment. I mean, let's look at that. Right? It's not healthy, because I want to be here as me, and you want to be here as you, and you want to be celebrated as you, and I want to be celebrated as me.
Mm. Absolutely.
Right? But then there's this idea that, oh, unless I'm whole and perfect, like I can't have this thing. That's not true either, right? Because it doesn't work in black and white. There's a gradient to life, right? So in this moment, if all I have to pay attention to, if all I have to attend to is how am I relating here and now, that's all there is. Right? My husband and I do this dance quite a lot. Right? We're like, oh, how am I being here? Do I really need him to come to bed at the same time as me?
Mm.
Like, what's happening there? Like, where's the want and where's the compulsion? And how do we navigate that dance together? Like, there's so much freedom and possibility, and oh my God, like transformation possible in relationship if we don't expect the other person to make us whole. So it's not about never wanting them to do that, but it's about looking when that happens. It's like, oh, okay, there's that one again. Hello, hi, how are you? What do you need? How can I give you what you're needing? Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's back to reparenting myself.
Mm.
So there, it's not so out of reach as we might think.
Right. Right. I love that. Yeah. So I know kind of when we first talked before even like having this conversation, and I know this is through your company to come to center. There's this idea of of center and like the thread that kind of runs through us. So how is that centeredness like related to these various concepts we've been kind of discussing today? Safety, uncertainty,
Mm.
love, and then
Mm.
even let's add hope in there, right? Since we're doing this after the GHS, but like how does that centeredness relate to those feelings and emotions um, in my
Mm.
own body? Or
Mm.
in your body, actually. I'm going to ask you about your body. But
Right. I mean, and I will say, yeah, my body or yours, I think the point is it's pointing to the same place,
right.
right? And when I use this phrase, right, what it means to me is the place in each of us. And it's not a static place. This is a process. It's very dynamic. But there is a place that you know, and I know, and everyone who breathes knows, that is unchanging, fully dynamic. It's the place you feel the most you. It's the place where you know, where it's not a question. You just know it in your bones that you're good, you're free, you're whole, and you need nothing from outside to make you whole. That's it. And you know this in your body as a felt sense. In any moment that you've experienced flow, you've been here. And how it relates is, this is the longing underneath all longings, is to return back and move from this place under the craving for the relationship, for the job, for the money, for the ice cream. Like, it's the place where we are seeking fulfillment, right? But the fulfillment lies here. We just forget. And that's okay, because all the senses are looking outside. You just don't look in here, but it's here. Right? So how does it relate to all these feelings? Well, it's the birthplace of each of those. It's the container in which everything you've ever lived occurs. And it's the place in you that you are the most you. You're alive, you're vibrant, you're receptive, and you're powerful and creative. And if you know that place that you go to when you're meditating, it's the place when you're playing music and it's just the music's playing you. You don't even know how it's happening. Right? But behind all the things, there is that part of you. It's a dimension. And it's a cultivation to bring that dimension forth in the way you speak, the way you hear, the way you move, the way you walk. That's the invitation. How would it be to live from that place?
Wow, I love that. And I think that's a really good place to, like, that feels like kind of where we were, the center we were coming to a little bit in this conversation. So, um, yeah, well, I would love for you to tell people more about where they can find out about you and
Mm,
your work in the world. So yeah, I'll let you speak to
thank
that.
you. I can be found through my website. It's www.come2center.com, which is the invitation for each of us in the world to come together from that place so we can create a world that works for everyone. Yeah. So find me on my website, shoot me an email. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ishita. Really appreciate having you on
Thank
here, and it was such a pleasure to talk to you and share this conversation with you. And yeah, I'm really excited to get this one out to everybody. So,
Thanks so much, Tim, for being so sweet and receptive. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
awesome. Well, guys, we will wrap this interview there, and we'll see you guys all next time.
Bye.